Hi everyone, my name is Holly, and in today's video I am going to be showing you some of the books that I have owned the longest, specifically unread books. So within a bookworm's life, we kind of gather a little arsenal, or actually a building of books. At this point in my life, I feel like I need to go back and look at the books that I have owned the longest and have not read yet, which is a big problem. I actually didn't start reading until late 2014. I actually despised reading. I made fun of people who read, and look at me now. I found that one book that I just fell in love with. It changed my whole life. I kind of entered the reading life very, very late because of that. Some of these books are not as old as like a normal person who has read their entire life. Most of these are just a few years old, but to me, I think having books that are like 4 years old that I haven't read yet, I need to just analyze them now, and that's what we're doing today. So on Goodreads, I have a books I own shelf, and I've had Goodreads since I first started reading, and I've had this shelf for that long, so it's super, super easy to just go on there and sort the very first books that I added to that list. And I've gathered them here today, so let's start with the first one. And that first one is Stolen Songbird by Danielle L. Jensen. So this book was actually in my very first stack of books I ever bought at Barnes & Noble, and in that first stack was also Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson and 3 by J. Posey, and I've read both and loved. But yet, here is the third book, Unread. But this book sounds so freaking cool, and it's basically about a girl who gets kidnapped from her home and is taken to the cave of the trolls. And there she is forced to marry the troll prince in order to break some type of curse that has been brought upon all of these trolls by some witch. And this just sounds amazing. It sounds like a really cool fairy tale. I've heard that its world building is really fantastic. Honestly, I think what really holds me back from reading this is because of it being a really awkward paperback. It's kind of small, and it's thick, and it's really stiff. Okay, we're talking about a book here, okay? I honestly just need to pick the series up soon. All of the books are out, so I can easily marathon them all. And actually, I think I might just do that after I finish the Throne of Glass series. You guys hold me to it. The next book that I have had for 84 years is Trial by Fire by Josephine Angelini, right? Yeah. So I actually don't know where I purchased this book from. I'm thinking it was probably really cheap on Amazon, so I kind of just grabbed it. And plus, this is one of the books that was going around BookTube like crazy a few years ago. So the genre this book is in is a mix of paranormal and fantasy, and it follows our main character Lily, who is allergic to a lot of things, which causes her to be constantly sick. And her best friend Tristan decide to go to a party, and there her best friend ends up leaving her for another girl, and then she ends up having a seizure from a drink filled with alcohol, which kind of annoys me already. That's not a good sign. For one, what a horrible best friend, and two, why go to a party that's obviously going to have a ton of alcohol at, and then have the chance of you drinking from a cup? Oh, this is a bad sign. As the alcohol threatens her weak body, she ends up finding herself being transported to a new world, which sounds pretty cool. The next series I have here is a very hyped one, and that is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I actually own all 4 books in the series, and the movie for this comes out really soon, so I feel like I need to dive on that bandwagon and just read it. It is a dystopian, so I haven't really been quite in the mood for dystopian lately. I've been really in that high fantasy mood, and I've been freaking trucking along in that genre, so I just haven't felt the need to pick this one up, but I really need to. But this book basically centers around the children of America, and they have been somehow transformed mentally, and in their early teen years they end up experiencing mysterious abilities, so it kind of has like the superpower element to it. But then the adults in the story end up putting a lot of these teens in rehabilitation centers, and then our main character ends up breaking out of one of them, and then the plot thickens. I feel like this book is either going to be a hit or a miss, and I really hope it's a hit for me. That movie comes out, and I have high hopes, I think. I need to read this. So the next book here is Unearthly by Cynthia Hand, and this is another paranormal book, kind of about angels, and honestly I feel like this genre, like the dystopian paranormal angel thing, was a huge thing throughout YouTube a few years ago. So now all of these books that I bought because of all these booktubers back then, I still haven't read them, but I did buy this whole entire trilogy because of Katie Tastic. She used to talk about the series all the time, and she said it was very underrated, and today she still talks about how good it is, so I still have high hopes for it. It's basically about a girl named Clara, and 1/4 of her blood is that of an angel's. This gives her wings that she has not yet learned how to use, and also just special abilities that she hasn't quite developed yet. And then she ends up getting strange visions of a boy and a fire, and her and her family end up following those visions to see what's up, basically. I really hope to get to this. If I don't get to it in the next year or so, I will probably unhaul the whole thing because they're just taking up space at this point. So the next book I have here is Prince of Thorns by Mark Lawrence. So I bought this book in the very, very early stages of my reading, and also when I first discovered Mark Lawrence, and I then started collecting all of his books, which I still am to this day, to be honest. So this book takes place in the same world as the Broken Empire series, and I can't really say too much about it since they do go together, but it does follow our main character, Prince Jalin, or Jalen, I'm not quite sure how to say that name, but he is the Red Queen's grandson who is just out of his teenage years, but his main interests involve drinking and lying and gambling and messing around with all the ladies. So he's a very dark and interesting character, which makes me so incredibly excited to delve more into Mark Lawrence's stories. I can't wait, and yeah, this cover is so cool. Actually, all of the color, Mark Lawrence is just blessed with amazing fantasy covers. They're so interesting, and when you put them all together, it's just so aesthetically pleasing. It's awesome. Whoops. So the next book on my list is The Coldest Girl in Cold Town by Holly Black. And man, I had to go dumpster diving for this book. It was like at the bottom of my shelf underneath like 10 books. It was very hard to get to. In fact, I'm out of breath. So this was actually my very first Holly Black purchase, and since then I have read The Darkest Part of the Forest and The Cruel Prince by her, but for some reason I didn't read her first book that I purchased. Don't ask why. It just sort of happened that way, and I've owned this book for so long now that I really want to go into it because it's basically about vampires. And I am so curious to see how Holly Black writes in this world that isn't fae. But in this world, vampires are known to the public, and because of this, they are put into these places called cold towns, which are basically prisons. Can't wait to go into this one. Need to do that. So the final book, I think, is Black Ice by Becca Fitzpatrick. So the only reason I own this book is because a few years ago it circled around BookTube yet again, and it mostly circled around the big booktubers because I believe Katie Tastic, Poland Bananas Books, and Jessie the Reader, their book club, I'm pretty sure this was one of the books that they read together, and they hyped it up so much that I think everyone bought it, but then everyone else kind of didn't like it. It definitely has a bad reputation, so I'm kind of going into it very wary, but honestly, it sounds pretty cool. This is a young adult thriller with, I guess, some mix of romance and contemporary elements into it, which has me a little bit worrisome, but I'm still excited. And also the boy on the cover looks like a character from the video game series Infamous, and he also looks like my boyfriend, Darren. And I don't think I can let it go because of that. But this book basically follows our main character named Britt, and she goes on a road trip with a few friends, and then they ended up getting stranded because of bad weather. They have no connection to the outside world, so they have to get out and find a cabin to keep warm or they'll freeze to death. And then all of a sudden, two men knock on the door. Dun dun dun! I think this sounds super cool, but if I don't pick it up within the next year, I will probably unhaul it. Alright, so those are some of the unread books that I have owned the longest. Tell me down below if you own some pretty old books that you haven't read yet. I would love to know. Also tell me if you have read any of these, because maybe that will push me to read them even quicker. Give this video a big thumbs up for me, and also don't forget to follow me on social media. I'm on Instagram, which is at HollyHeartsBooks, and I'm also on Twitter, which is at HollyNiece. And until we meet again, happy reading.